I am Percival, a retired officer of the law, and the tale I'm about to unfold took place a decade ago. Why break my silence now? The date looms near, and I can no longer bear the weight of these memories. Sleep has eluded me for a week, so forgive any inconsistencies or errors in my account. The year was 2013 when I found myself reassigned to a quaint little town known as Holly Forest. Nestled against a forest to the north, it was home to a mere 300 households. Having left the chaos of city policing in my late 30s, this sleepy town was the sanctuary I sought. Crime was virtually non-existent, save for the occasional drunken brawl or petty theft. But on June 5, 2013, that tranquility was shattered. I reported for duty at 6:30 that morning, greeted by the warm smile of our ginger-haired receptionist. I must confess, I harbored a bit of a crush on her. As I made my way to my office, I found my superior waiting for me, accompanied by a stranger. A woman in her 30s, her dirty blonde hair and crisp suit screamed FBI. Chief Davidson introduced me to the FBI agent, Claire Schmitz, who greeted me with an air of cordiality. After exchanging pleasantries, Davidson revealed the reason for their visit, a mysterious package that had arrived that morning. Why would the FBI send an agent for such a mundane task? I asked, examining the VHS tape Davidson handed me. "You'll have to see for yourself," he replied. Claire handed me a nondescript cardboard box, devoid of any address, in which the tape had arrived. I inserted the tape into our antiquated VHS player, connected to an equally outdated TV set. The screen flickered to life, revealing a tiled wall, seemingly part of a kitchen. As I fast-forwarded through the footage, my colleagues watched in silence. 10 minutes in, the horrifying reason for the FBI's involvement became clear. The camera panned slowly across the kitchen counter, zooming in on the face of a child, a girl of perhaps 7 or 8 with dirty blonde hair and a small smile. My stomach churned as my mind raced through the worst possible scenarios. The camera continued its slow pan, revealing another girl, and then another. In total, 8 girls, all appearing to be between 8 to 10 years old, all smiling, all with their eyes closed as if asleep. The footage ended abruptly, returning to the tiled floor. I was left speechless, feeling as though I'd just watched a preview of a murder case, the very kind I'd hoped to leave behind in the city. I turned to my colleagues, who seemed to be waiting for answers I didn't have. "What is this?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. "We don't know," Davidson confessed. The package arrived around 4 a.m., with no address and only that tape inside. "Have you checked for fingerprints?" I asked, my voice shaky. "It was clean," Claire replied. "We sent a copy to headquarters to try and identify the girls in the video." "And?" I pressed, my anxiety mounting. "Nothing," she replied, leaving me stunned. "What do you mean, nothing?" "We couldn't identify the girls. With the limited information we have, it would take a significant amount of time to sift through the data. Time, we don't have, I finished her sentence. What about the tape? Any significant details? Do we know when it was recorded? I asked, desperate for answers. Yes, we do, she replied. According to the tech lab, the tape was recorded in April. Okay, when in April? I interrupted, taking a large gulp of my now cold coffee to quell the nausea building in my stomach. The tape was recorded in 2024, she finished, looking as dumbfounded as I felt. How is that possible? I exclaimed, jumping up and spilling coffee all over my desk. That was my reaction too, Davidson admitted, handing me a ragged towel. We suspect the tape may have been tampered with. Our team is working on it as we speak, Claire added, as I attempted to clean up the mess. So, what's our next move? I asked, tossing the soaked towel into the trash bin under my desk. Claire retrieved a laptop from a hard case she'd left on the bench under the window. We found a frame in the tape, she said, opening the laptop to reveal an image of a white wall with a series of coordinates written in black ink. The coordinates led us to a small cabin deep in the forest near the town. As we speak, a team of experts is combing through the place. HQ believes that you, as the sole investigator in the station and with your reputation for hunting serial killers, should be involved. So, we're heading to the cabin then. I pushed myself up from my chair, fighting against the weakness in my knees and the turmoil in my stomach. I managed to steady my voice, unless there's any other information, you're not at liberty to share at the moment. I studied her closely, gauging her reaction. My past experiences with the FBI had taught me they had a knack for withholding what they deemed unnecessary information. She shook her head in response, no, I'm not withholding any information. We should get going, the forensic team is waiting for us. Already feeling the strain, I relinquished the driving duties to Chief Davidson. His Wrangler Jeep tore through the city streets, then into the forest, and finally down a narrow dirt road. The cabin came into view quickly, a hive of activity in the otherwise serene landscape. It was swarming with agents, some clad in biohazard suits, others in yellow vests, meticulously collecting samples from every inch of the cabin and its surroundings. Stepping out of the Jeep, a sense of foreboding washed over me. Despite the tranquil surroundings, I felt as though I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, each step drawing me deeper into trouble, the reason for which eluded me. A yellow-vested agent approached us, answering Claire's query with a shake of his head. Nothing. The place is spotless. We checked with the town office, this cabin isn't recorded anywhere. Forensics estimates it was built about 10 years ago, and judging by the overgrowth, it's been deserted for just as long. So, the cabin was built but never occupied? I asked. Yes, sir, he confirmed, adding, but the interior tells a different story. The cabin is in pristine condition. He gestured for us to follow him inside as the agents in biohazard suits cleared out. The cabin itself was unremarkable, constructed of walnut wood and well preserved, with no signs of nature's encroachment. Even the two windows overlooking the area were spotlessly clean. I ascended the 3 steps to the wide open door, the interior surprisingly clean and devoid of any furniture. But the kitchen wall, it was the same wall from the opening of that tape. What I hadn't noticed before was the peculiar design on the tiles. Each one was painted with an eye in the center, a blue eye, not human, but reminiscent of Saruman's eye from Lord of the Rings. Each eye was surrounded by a mass of green, bush-like strokes, as if concealing the owner of those eyes. A chill coursed down my spine, amplifying the unease that had taken root within me. The counter was unmistakable, it was the same one from the tape. This was indeed the place. The floor was constructed of the same hardwood as the rest of the cabin. There was only one other window, offering a view of the area behind the cabin. I moved around the kitchen counter, positioning myself where the camera had been placed in the footage. But there were no white walls to be seen, no signs that anyone had ever inhabited this place. It was as if the cabin existed solely for the purpose of that chilling tape. The mystery deepened, the silence of the cabin echoing the questions swirling in my mind. I left the cabin in disarray, taking a walk around to where the 3rd window overlooked. There was nothing, but the sense of dread kept intensifying. Despite the chirping of the birds and the sound of a nearby river, I felt increasingly nervous with each passing moment. A fever seemed to be building within me. I tried to inspect the surrounding area, but my strength gave out. I awoke, soaked in cold sweat, back in my office, sprawled on the bench under my office window. Davidson had driven me back when I collapsed. A doctor was called, who attributed my fainting spell to overwork and exhaustion. But that couldn't be the case. I hadn't had a single case for the last 6 months that would warrant such stress, and I had been sleeping well every night. He prescribed some medication to regain my health back, but regain from what? I asked Davidson about the case at hand. Nothing. Forensics had no new information beyond what we were briefed earlier. Claire had left moments before to check into a small motel down the main road. It seemed like the case was a dead end, or so I thought. I think that's enough for now. I can hear them calling. I'll continue writing when the calls stop, hopefully by morning. The remainder of that day passed in a blur of illness, so intense that I found myself leaving the office early. I headed to my modest flat nestled within an apartment complex. Yet, everything seemed different, altered in some indefinable way. As I pulled into the parking lot, an unshakable sense of impending doom gripped me. I was in trouble again, I could feel it. Boarding the elevator to ascend to the 5th floor, I tried to convince myself that the shadows I saw reflected in the cabin's mirror were mere figments of my fevered imagination. But I was gravely mistaken. The shadows were real, and they were only the beginning of the nightmare that awaited me. Have you ever found yourself in a room, unable to recall why you entered in the first place? That was the sensation that washed over me as I opened the door to my apartment. The furniture seemed to pulse subtly, as if alive. Terrified by the thought that I was losing my sanity, I switched on all the lights in the apartment. The room looked bizarrely strange. Bathed in the red glow of the setting sun streaming through the lone window. Didn't my apartment have a balcony? Adding to the strangeness, I had left the office around 4, and the drive had only taken 5 minutes. How was it possible that the sun was setting in the middle of the afternoon? But these questions faded away as the synthetic white lights of my small chandelier flickered to life. In the blink of an eye, the room returned to its familiar state, just as I had left it that morning. I confess, I was too ill to care. I swallowed a handful of pills with a glass of milk, too exhausted to question the oddities of the day. I immediately collapsed onto my not-so-comfortable bed, surrendering to the pull of sleep. For reasons I couldn't recall, I awoke hours later, engulfed in total darkness. I fumbled for my phone, only to find myself unable to remember the password. The digital clock on my nightstand glowed 2:24 in a harsh red light. I assumed the power company had experienced a glitch and needed to reset their systems, causing the blackout. But I was sorely mistaken. I never close my bedroom door, and I always keep a Ruger LCP under my pillow, a chilling gift from a serial killer back when I started my career. It was 2009, and the killer, who never made the news, broke into my New York apartment and tried to shoot me while I slept. I survived, mostly because I was waiting for him under my bed. Now, standing in the doorway of my room was a shadowy figure. Despite the darkness of the apartment, I could see it clearly. It towered at least 8 feet tall, and as it drew closer, the hairs on my arms stood on end, a paralyzing fear gripping me. The creature had the body of a man, but contorted. Its hands were much longer than a human, and its head was anything but human. Slightly oval-shaped, with small, dot-like eyes that burned with a menacing red light. Its snout was long and curved upward. It limped towards me slowly, filling the room with a hot, dry air that made breathing increasingly difficult with each passing moment. As my stomach churned, my reflexes kicked in. I reached for my handgun and fired 3 bullets in quick succession. 2 found their mark in its head, while the third pierced its heart. The creature howled in agony as I tried to steady my fever-ridden hands, dropping the gun and fumbling to turn on my phone's flashlight. As the flashlight beam hit the creature, it vanished before my eyes. I scanned the room in the dim light of my rapidly discharging phone, a harbinger of the impending return to my personal hell. Fear gripped me, my feet numb, paralyzed. Worse still, I had only 2 bullets left, as I discovered with trembling hands when I checked the clip of the Ruger. That's when I heard them. Shadows began to form around the room, deep, unnatural shadows with no visible source. They only intensified as I shone the light on them. In moments, my room was no more. I found myself sitting on my bed in the middle of a sea of thick darkness. The room filled with hot air that burned my nose and eyes. I almost didn't want to breathe in as I heard the first call. From the corner where my closet was situated, a deep voice began to call to me, "We mean no harm, just kill the light, let us see you." I retched in reflex, my body trying to expel a poison I hadn't consumed. A second voice joined in, a woman's voice, soft and inviting, almost seductive in nature. As the first wave of shadow hit the bed, other voices joined in, "Let us help you, Percival," a child called to me. Somehow, the girl's voice sounded familiar. The voices grew louder and louder each time they called and heard no answer. I grabbed the gun with my shaking hands. With no feeling in my feet, I attempted an escape, collapsing into the dark sea of shadows at the foot of my bed. As the air began to flee from my lungs, I managed to crawl the short distance between my bed and the doorway. As I crossed the threshold, their calls grew louder and louder, shouting at the top of their lungs, commanding, begging, enticing me to return. Their sounds faded into growls of despair as my numb feet crossed the threshold of the doorway. The light came back in a flash, and strength returned to my feet. I couldn't get back to sleep that night. I only sat in the small living room with the TV on. I waited for the sun to come. The voices didn't subside until the first rays of sun hit the curtains on the window.